Question number 5, Grant Robertson.
Speaker, my question is to the Minister of Finance. Does he stand by his statement in question time yesterday with respect to average wages, quote, "We do not promise some specific level of income"?
The Honourable Stephen Joyce.
Mr Speaker, on behalf of the Minister of Finance, yes.
Question, Mr Speaker.
Supplementary question, Grant Robertson.
Why then did he produce a policy in 2014 that specifically claimed that the average wage would reach $62,000 in 2018? Right there.
The Honourable Stephen Joyce.
Well, on behalf of the Minister of Finance, I happen to have my own copy of that policy to hand, and I appreciate the member's interest. And it clearly says the Treasury forecasts average wages to grow by around $6,600 to $62,000 by mid-2018 and expects around 150,000 new jobs to be created in that time.
Question, Mr
Supplementary
Speaker.
question, Grant Robertson.
Referring to that same document, can he confirm that it says, quote, "National's economic plan will make those forecasts a reality"? And if that's not a promise, what is?
Order. The Honourable Stephen Joyce.
Mr Speaker, on behalf of the Minister of Finance, yes, I can. And the good news for the member is we're making very good progress. Because Prefew said that it expected the average weekly wage to be $1,114. The actual is $1,111, which is just $3 per week behind at this point. Mr Speaker, the point remains that they are Treasury predictions, but it is only this government's economic policies that deliver the economic results for New Zealanders, which they test every 3 years.
Question, Mr Speaker.
Supplementary question, Grant Robertson.
It's a job you'll never have, Jerry.
Order. Order. I know the member was responding to an interjection which was unhelpful, but can we have the supplementary question?
Speaker.
Supplementary
Can he
question.
confirm that on the basis of the same calculation that he used to say that there would be a $62,000 average wage in 2018, that will now actually be a $59,000 $400 average wage? And who should working people go to see to find the $2,600 a year that's missing from what he promised them?
Either of those two supplementary questions, Honourable
Mr
Stephen
Speaker,
Joyce.
on behalf of the Minister of Finance, the member's wrong. The latest forecast is actually an average wage of $60,000 in mid-2018. But as the Minister of Finance constantly stresses to Mr Robertson, those are predictions that move around. We're confident that when the time comes in late 2017, when the National-led government is up against Labor and the Greens, that New Zealanders will see that their wages have grown much faster than inflation under this government, and under the previous government, wages were growing slower than inflation.
Supplementary question, Mr Speaker.
Order. Supplementary question, Grant Robertson.
In light of that answer, can he confirm that Budget 2016 says that average real wages will not go up in the next 2 financial years under his government?
The Honourable Stephen Joyce.
Mr Speaker, on behalf of the Minister of Finance, the member can't have it both ways. He can't at one point say that the government is not bound by the Treasury figures and then say the government is bound by the Treasury figures. The reality is that every 6 months, Treasury comes up with predictions. The reality is that Treasury expects real wages to continue rising over time. And importantly, the experience for New Zealanders is that over the last 5 years, the average annual wage has risen 14.1% compared to inflation of only 4.7%. That's what Kiwis are actually experiencing, and we'll see where they're at next year.
White. Order. Question. No, order. Question number 6.